Ancient Egypt was one of the greatest and most powerful civilizations in the entire history of mankind. This civilization lasted for over 3,000 years, from 3150 BC to 30 BC, and it has left some of the most astounding relics and artifacts. The culture, treasures, and knowledge of ancient Egypt are almost unrivaled, and to this day there's still a lot to discover about them. Let's take a look at some of the most interesting and bizarre discoveries found in Egypt. From the sealed coffins in Luxor to walking whales, here are 15 amazing discoveries in Egypt that scare scientists. Number 15. Sealed coffins in Luxor. In 2019, archaeologists announced that they discovered a huge collection of more than 20 sealed coffins in the city of Luxor. To this day, they are yet to disclose what's inside the sealed coffins. But based on their appearance, the majority of the tombs in the necropolis hold the remains of nobles, government officials, and other elite people that were buried during the late period of ancient Egypt. It's a bit unnerving to see this many sealed coffins, and who knows what the mummies look like inside. Because of the number of coffins discovered in this area, it was dubbed the largest and most important archaeological discovery in the past few years. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now. Number 14. Clayton Ring. The Clayton rings are wide, conical ceramic rings found in the Sahara Desert, and according to researchers, they date from the pre-dynastic period of ancient Egypt. Usually, it's easy to deduce a hypothesis about the purpose of something by looking at its shape and form. However, archaeologists and researchers were all confused about the purpose of the Clayton rings. These enigmatic objects remain to be shrouded in mystery to this day. All we know is that many of them were found in some of the most inhospitable parts of Egypt's deserts. These rings were most likely used by the nomadic herders inhabiting the Dakhla oasis during Egypt's first dynasties. But for what? Why are these rings so important that the nomadic people went out of their way to bring these rings to the desert? Why make them? Were they vital to their survival? There are a few theories surrounding the purpose of these rings. Some say they're used for cheese production or salt collection. Some say they're used as bird traps, water collectors, fire-making tools, an oven, and more. There's even a theory that suggests the Clayton rings were used as maggot farms. None of these theories are convincing enough to be close to the truth, and perhaps we'll never know the true purpose of these enigmatic rings. Number 13. 4,000-year-old mummy. Archaeologists were terrified when they recently discovered this horrifying mummy that's believed to be almost 4,000 years old. They found the mummy while excavating a burial chamber in Aswan, a historic city that lies on the Nile. Throughout the years, many looters tried to get what they could in the archaeological sites, and they often sold the artifacts they found illegally. However, this burial chamber was said to be hidden from looters, and so it was guaranteed that everything inside the tomb was safe. All of the archaeologists present during the excavation were said to be shaken by the appearance of the mummy. One of them even said that they felt as if they were in a scary movie, and that the mummy would move at any time. Of course, that didn't happen. The archaeologists weren't merciful with their remarks, though. They even went as far as calling the mummy ugly. But you see, the remains they discovered weren't a mummy. Instead, the coffin stored the body of someone covered in black material. Unlike the usual mummies found in Egypt that are carefully bandaged and embalmed, this 4,000-year-old corpse was only sloppily covered with bandages and put inside the coffin. What's more astounding is that when they analyzed the bones of the corpse, they found out that the body belonged to a woman that died in their 70s. You see, people in ancient Egypt didn't grow very old, so if it was true that this woman is more than 70 years old, it'd be worth researching their background. I guess even if you're a seasoned archaeologist and historian that's seen it all, you still get shaken and taken aback when you stumble upon a particularly creepy corpse. Number 2. Valley of the Golden Mummies. The Valley of the Golden Mummies is located in Bahariya Oasis, about 380 kilometers west of the pyramids. It was discovered in 1996, and many were surprised when they found 4 tombs while excavating. What shocked the archaeologists the most is that they found more than 100 mummies of high-ranking Roman Egyptians inside. Most of them were wearing gold masks, hence the name Valley of the Golden Mummies. Most of the mummies were decked out in luxurious, intricate decorations, and even though more than 2,000 years have passed, they withstood the test of time. Just like the burial chambers of the royals of ancient Egypt, the 4 tombs were filled with treasure. Many of the mummies were decorated with scenes depicting gods and goddesses across their chests. But the details weren't the only astounding thing. Inside the tombs were luxurious jewelry items such as bracelets, jars, and coins. With a number of jewelry and decorations inside the tombs, it can easily be deduced that the people buried in the Valley of the Golden Mummies were incredibly rich. Number 11. Library of Alexandria. Now, this is one of the most interesting establishments that has ever been built in ancient Egypt, but sadly, our generation never got the chance to have a glimpse of this amazing structure. This is the Great Library of Alexandria, or at least how it's depicted in illustrations. You're probably thinking, what's so special about a library? You see, the Library of Alexandria was built in the 4th century BC, and it's famed for being one of the most important repositories of knowledge in the ancient world. Imagine if we had access to the many books and scrolls found inside the library. Perhaps we wouldn't need to question each and every archaeological artifact. We would know a lot more about how the ancient Egyptians lived back then, and the other civilizations as well. The Library of Alexandria contained manuscripts written by famous figures in the ancient world, including Plato, Aristotle, Homer, and Herodotus, among many others. The Library of Alexandria had a huge expanse of knowledge that could tell us surprising details about the ancient world, and yet, it fell into ruins and completely ceased to exist. Many archaeologists and historians today can only dream about the library's contents. The story of its rise and fall is still talked about to this day, and as you would expect, the story of this library is complex and perhaps as dramatic as a film. Alexander the Great was the one behind the great city of Alexandria, Egypt, located at the northwestern end of the Nile Delta. After his death, the empire was divided among his generals, and one of them was Ptolemy I Soter. During his reign, he ruled Egypt and established the capital of Alexandria. For many years, the city flourished and was recognized as one of the greatest. The library was established shortly after, and it housed almost all of the world's known manuscripts. Over the years, the library slowly expanded, and it became the center of learning and culture. It had texts about mythology, medical practices, scientific manuscripts, and more. It is the haven of knowledge about the Western ancient world. Despite the huge collection of manuscripts, Ptolemaic rulers weren't content. At some point, it was said that all sailing vessels should offer any manuscript they have on board to be added to the library before they could pass. A scribe would then copy the manuscript before keeping the original and handing over the transcribed version to the ships. Just imagine being the librarian of the Library of Alexandria. You would have to keep track of thousands of books, and the system that we use today to organize our books wasn't known to them back then. Organizing the books was a tedious task, but compared to the knowledge stored in the library, it was a simple sacrifice. However, the library was burnt and reduced to ruins. There are many theories about what happened to the library, but the most popular one is that Julius Caesar started the fire that made the library cease to exist. But there is a theory that the library did not turn into ashes because of a huge fire. The fire only scorched several of the scrolls, but nothing else. If this is the truth, then what happened to the Great Library of Alexandria? Another theory is that the library was simply overshadowed over time as Rome and Athens slowly gained influence over the Western ancient civilizations, and Alexandria was robbed of its title as the center of learning and knowledge. Now here's the biggest plot twist. You see, even though the Library of Alexandria was hailed as a center of knowledge back then, there were almost no records about it. Today, it's gained a mythical reputation, and some people even doubt that it existed, or if it was as grand as the stories say. To this day, many archaeologists and historians lament over the tragic loss of knowledge with the Great Library of Alexandria. But what if the stories we read today aren't true at all? Who knows? Perhaps in the next few years we'll finally be able to know more about what could have been the greatest ancient library we could find. Number 10. Artificial toe. Science is pretty amazing, don't you think? Day by day, we continue to discover amazing things. And one of the most amazing things we enjoy today, thanks to the hard work of researchers, is prosthetics. Today, when someone loses an arm or leg, a prosthetic device or prostheses can help them recover. For many people today, an artificial limb helps them perform daily activities and provide some mobility. Additionally, a prosthesis helps someone become independent and self-sufficient. With that being said, scientists were all surprised when they discovered a 3,000-year-old wooden prosthesis. It was found attached to a female mummy in an ancient Egyptian gravesite. And it wasn't just a normal prosthetic device either. They found out that the prosthetic device was fitted and refitted several times. The method of creating and putting it on was quite meticulous for a device that's thousands of years old. According to research, the prosthetic device was created for a priest's daughter. The artisan that created the toe was an artisan that was not only skilled in creating wooden tools, but also in human physiognomy. Since the wooden device was fitted solely for the priest's daughter, the prosthetic device was thought to be pretty comfortable and natural to wear. It's astounding to see a device like this, and it was way too far ahead of its time. Number 9. Hidden Chamber in the Great Pyramid. Egypt is home to over 118 pyramids that continue to puzzle researchers to this day. Despite studying them for decades, it's astounding that we still have a lot of things to discover about them. For instance, researchers were all horrified when they discovered that there's a secret chamber that was nearly 100 feet long that lay above the Great Gallery of the Great Pyramid. We only got to know about this big chamber only because of a cosmic ray scan. Scientists continue to rely on cutting-edge technology to scan the contents of the Great Pyramid. However, we still don't know what's truly inside the Great Pyramid or the purpose of the void inside it. What we do know is that as we continue to research, we'll learn a lot more about the Great Pyramid. Number 8. Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone is a huge stone made of granodiorite. It's inscribed with 3 versions of a decree issued in Memphis, Egypt. Over the years, it's become one of the most famous objects in the British Museum. But what exactly is this stone? And why is it so important? The decree that was inscribed on the stone is pretty significant. It states a decree that the priests of a temple in Memphis officially support the king. The decree was written in 3 different scripts, one in hieroglyphics, Demotic, or the cursive Egyptian script used for daily purposes, and finally, ancient Greek. When the Rosetta Stone was found, nobody knew how to read ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, but many scholars were still able to read ancient Greek. Because we have a script that we could understand, translating Egyptian hieroglyphics became much easier. Number 7. Cat Burial Grounds. Ancient Egyptians are known for mummifying the dead, and they're most known for mummifying royalty and the elite extravagantly. Most of all, they're also known to mummify countless animals to honor the gods. But did you know that the ancient Egyptians also had affection for their pets, and they buried some of them with love back then? Researchers were all surprised when they excavated a 2,000-year-old burial ground. Unlike the mummified animals that were discovered in tombs to honor the gods, the ones buried in the cemeteries were pets. None of the creatures in the cemeteries were killed by the hands of people. They either died of old age or because of an injury. Some of the animals were even carefully placed in a sleeping position, wrapped in a blanket. It seems that the ancient Egyptians took care of a variety of animals. Aside from cats and dogs, they also found exotic pets like a macaque monkey, a falcon, and a fox. Number 6. Underwater Tomb. Being an archaeologist is quite hard, and more so if you're forced to excavate a tomb that's submerged in brown, muddy water. When researchers discovered the entrance to the 2,300-year-old tomb of a pharaoh in Egypt, they were forced to halt their excavations because of the death-defying entryway to the tomb. They needed to enter through a narrow underwater passageway filled with muddy water. The water was only several feet deep, but the real challenge lay in the passageway of the tomb. Thanks to the underwater archaeologists that risked their lives to enter the underwater chambers, we now know that inside of them were undisturbed tombs, with one of them housing what looked like a royal sarcophagus. What's more exciting is that the entire burial chamber remained unopened and undisturbed. Number 5. Fish in the Sahara Desert. Take a look at this. This is a scorpion fish found within the mortuary complex of Hatshepsut, none other than the first female pharaoh that reigned during 1500 BC. This isn't the only illustration depicting fish in ancient Egypt. Researchers found illustrations of tilapia, eels, catfish, moonfish, mullet, carp, pufferfish, and more adorning the walls of ancient Egyptian structures. There are also illustrations that show ancient Egyptians while they're fishing. With that being said, researchers found enough evidence to prove that a good part of Egypt was once covered by the sea. They even found fossils of coral, shark teeth, and sea urchins. Ancient Egypt may always be depicted as a desert environment, but in reality, that isn't the case. Many years ago, some parts of it even had forests and oceans. And now it's time for today's topic. This discovery in Egypt scares scientists. Recently, archaeologists seem to have discovered this chariot in an unknown location in Egypt. However, it seems that similar chariots were found in Bulgaria. Does this mean ancient Egypt had similarities to the settlers of Bulgaria back then? Were there long-distance travelers that journeyed all the way to ancient Egypt? It seems that we still have a lot to learn about this ancient civilization. As always, comment down below with the hashtag today's topic and let us know your opinion about what we just showed on screen. With that said, let's keep things moving. Number 4. Screaming Mummy. I don't think I need to explain why this discovery made scientists feel chills run down their spines. This is the Screaming Mummy, and you might think that his appearance is terrifying, but the story behind this mummy is equally macabre. This poorly preserved mummy is a prince. He is none other than Prince Pentawere, son of Pharaoh Ramesses III, and he's the guy that tried to kill his father by slashing his throat. Pretty brutal, huh? When Pentaware's body was embalmed, the ancient Egyptians did not feel the need to properly do it. No embalming fluid was used, and the body was naturally allowed to mummify on its own. There are rumors that his mouth was fixed in a way to make it look like the mummy is stuck in an eternal scream, but we're not sure of this info. So was his crime worth it? And did he succeed? It appears so. Based on research, scientists found out that there's a strong possibility that Ramesses III died after his throat was slashed. We don't know what led him to orchestrate his father's demise, but I can only guess that it involves power or recognition. Number 3. Silver Sarcophagus. Gold is abundant in ancient Egyptian tombs, and most of the royal artifacts found are made out of the heavy metal. The king and pharaohs of ancient Egypt liked to surround themselves with treasures, and most of them were made from gold. And so archaeologists were surprised when they discovered Susennes, also known as the Silver Pharaoh. He had riches that rivaled those of Tutankhamun. Susennes I was the third ruler of the 21st dynasty of ancient Egypt. During his reign, there was great instability in all of Egypt as the kingship was fractured and divided. At the time, Upper Egypt was the domain of the high priest of Amun, while the pharaoh ruled the delta of Lower Egypt. You would think that during an unstable period, the pharaoh wouldn't have a lot of riches to take to his grave, but on the contrary, Sunessis I had a very unique treasure in his tomb: silver. For the ancient Egyptians, gold mirrored the flesh of the gods, while silver was their bones. However, while gold was abundant in their territory, silver wasn't readily available in Egypt, and it needed to be imported from abroad. And yet, Sunessis I was encased in a silver coffin. This shows just how much wealth he had. In addition, archaeologists discovered other metal objects in his tomb that were of extremely high quality. This shows that despite ruling Egypt during tough times, he commanded and amassed a huge amount of wealth. Number 2. Tomb of the Pyramid Builders. I guess after this discovery, you would think the conspiracy theories about how the pyramids were built would slowly cease. You're looking at evidence that the pyramids were indeed built by workers in ancient Egypt. Thousands of men worked together to build what we now know today is one of the most magnificent structures of the ancient world. According to research, the work schedule that they followed wasn't ideal. We may think that working 8 hours a day is hard, but back then, these workers worked in 3-month shifts, and they worked until they dropped. In exchange, they were given the honor of being buried in mud brick tombs within the shadows of the sacred pyramids that they worked so hard to accomplish. Of course, working on the pyramids had another saving grace: a free meal. It's incredibly taxing to work under the harsh sunlight in ancient Egypt, and it's almost inconceivable for us modern-day humans to imagine doing the amount of work they did. But back then, in exchange for some free food, people would do the hardest labor. Based on the evidence found, approximately 10,000 laborers working on the pyramids ate 21 cattle and 23 sheep in just one day. Day by day, they were sent several cattle and sheep to feast on after work. Number 1. Walking whales. I want you to imagine a whale. Now imagine it's a bit smaller and slimmer and give it 4 legs. Now I want you to imagine them with sharp teeth. Pretty horrific, right? Archaeologists were dumbfounded when they discovered a new species of 4-legged whale that lived around 43 million years ago. Yes, you heard that right. 4-legged whale. Who knew such a thing existed? The skull of the whale found resembled that of Anubis, and back then, these animals surely ruled the oceans. Scientists estimated that they weighed 600 kilograms and had a length of about 10 feet. They had strong jaws to catch their prey, and they could swim in the ocean and walk on land. That's a pretty incredible beast, but I think I'm pretty okay with the whales that we see today. These walking whales are a bit too monstrous to exist today. What do you think of these incredible discoveries? Which one intrigued you the most? Drop your opinions in the comments below. Also, check out our other cool stuff showing up on the screen right now, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, everybody.